Hello and welcome to High Heels to Happy Feels. I'm Natalie,
And I'm Stephanie.
and today we are driving through Wyoming on the way back to my house from Stephanie's house. So, our podcast is going to be just a little bit different and a little bit late. So, Steph is driving, so we have written down some questions that we're just going to talk through from where we are in this season. So, first, let's talk about the elephant in the room. It's the season.
It's the season.
Yeah,
Right now, if you love Wyoming, I mean, it's a beautiful state, but man, I gotta tell you, the stretch we take, we call it windowing for a reason, folks.
Yeah.
Ouch.
it's a little bit windy, and we're in a big truck.
And and it's mid-December and it's in the 60s. It's the craziest thing. It is so bizarre. And we had ice when we left where we were at in Billings, Montana this morning, which is a halfway point for anybody who knows how big Montana is. Um, but yeah, this season, it's I got mixed emotions because the weather's confusing. The This country's confusing. I'm just confused.
Yeah, everything is confusing. And you know what? It's really interesting because I think it kind of happens like this every year, where we're coming to the end of the year, we're coming into the Christmas season, everybody starts getting a little holiday, they start feeling a little less aggressive. You don't want to get so much stuff done, but yet you're pushing on what it's going to look like next year. And then you're talking about giving and receiving. And
Right. Well, you're focused on, giving gifts and what's everybody want? What do I need to get for everybody else? And at least, most people are, because it's that spirit of giving and doing. But I think as we were talking about this and trying to go, okay, we need a list of questions that we really want to talk about this season. It also brings up the point that it's a stressor. I mean, it can be a real
for
stressor
sure,
for
yeah.
me because it's like, what didn't I get done this year that I'm thinking I had to get this done? And for me, it brings up a couple of questions, right? Like, number one, why am I letting it stress me out? Number two, why did I put that restriction on myself to begin with?
I think that's a great question because I think we do that just by nature. We refine and boundary and define what things are supposed to look like, and then beat ourselves up when we fall outside of that boundary or don't answer that question.
Totally agree.
All right, so let's talk about the questions that we did write down.
Okay.
All right, so be honest. Do you feel like you have next year figured out? I'm talking about the boundaries and the things we were just talking about.
Quite honestly, I'm pretty happy to kind of have a plan going into January. That's where I am.
Yeah,
I just, yes, I know exactly what do I want to accomplish. I mean, I think I know what I want to accomplish next year. But man, after the shifts we've had in the last 3 years, since really, 2.5 years since opening our business, I'm trying not to get too predictive about anything anymore or too expectant because then we are like a full 180. And for me, as I look, started listening to all my favorite astrologers and the different podcasts, and I've started looking at it myself, it's going to be such a monumental shift next year anyway that I think everybody's going to feel that to some degree.
yeah, that's a really good point. And so just before we sneak away from astrology, Stephanie has decided to go ahead and open to do readings in astrology. So in case you're interested in what your next year is going to look like, I'm just going to plug that in right there.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you.
Um, okay, so I'm much like that. I have my 2026, like we've been in corporate America for so very long.
Yes, we have.
And
Almost 30 years.
management, leadership, individual contributors, like we've done kind of across the board. And right now you're a management and leadership. But so you're always expected to be like, what is that going to look like in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4? So I kind of have what I want my year to look like next year. But as far as like nailed down goals, you're right. It's only January because I'm sick of not being predictive enough, like not looking at things and getting excited about those things too far down the road.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to miss things and then beat myself up because I made a plan and then I didn't execute it.
No, totally agree. And that's just it. And you're right. In terms of like the day job, for however long I have left there, I would absolutely agree that is very much one that has been more predictive, right? Because we tend to have to do our budgets and those kind of things and just really get a handle on things ahead of time. Hiring, what's our hiring plans look like? What is performance and compensation and all of that? But those are the regulars, and even those have shifted. Even from our internal, from the corporate perspective, it's even today. It's like we hear something shocking that goes, "Okay, did we know that had been launched? Did we know that was
Like
out
who's
there?
who's going to support that, and
Who's
how are
supporting
we doing
something? We're
that?
advertising this already. Oh my God!" So I don't know that anybody's got it all figured out. But like you said, I'm pretty happy to January, February thinking about kind of my own personal next steps and what I think.
Right? Yeah, me too. All right, so I'm going to go a little out of order, and not that we wrote these down in order, well, we kind of did, but anyway. So we're talking about the planning and the executing and what that looks like. Do you think you feel pressure to have that vision before you've had time to integrate what the end of this year looked like? Like, do you think as a society we're under a lot of pressure to have your vision, have it all figured out, have your goals aligned? What are going to be your New Year's resolutions before you really get to close this year down and be like, how do I feel about this year before you look at next year?
I think societally we do. I think you and I do a better job with it just based on what we know of ourselves and what we've learned of ourselves and what we've shared with our community in terms of going, well, I'm not ready yet. I haven't done my journaling. Leave me alone. I need more time. But I would totally agree that from a societal standing, we have this huge pressure to be like, what's your New Year's resolutions? Who says? And are they goals? Are they resolutions? I mean, why are you resolving to do those things? And are you going to beat yourself up again this time next year when you didn't hit the mark on every single thing on that list? I mean,
yeah.
Why do we have to march to that order? Why do we have to put that kind of stress on ourselves? Because that's what it is.
So, what just popped in my head is when you're at somebody's wedding, and I remember when I was younger and at my own wedding, and people were like, oh, when are you going to have kids?
Oh,
so like this, just the society push of always planning, always having something figured out down the line. And it seems so heavy in December for all of us like that.
Yeah.
For all of next year. Like, what are you going to do next year?
Right.
I don't know yet.
And it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Right.
I mean, it's like asking what you're going to wear 6 months from now. But hell, I don't know if I'll fit in everything I have 6 months from now.
Right.
So what does that look like?
Right.
I don't know.
Allow things to change. Allow things to unfold. That's the motto.
If you're planning, and I'm a planner, you know this about me.
Mm-hmm.
I am, and others that know me well will laugh because yes, I am a huge planner. But at the same time, you do have to let some things happen. And you have to enjoy the experience because the expression, the journey is the destination, is so very true when it comes to our lives. Because are you experiencing the journey? And if you're so trapped on this list and so focused on that, are you actually experiencing everything that goes with accomplishing that as you go? Or are you just checking it off your list?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So why do you think not knowing feels like not knowing the plan, not like the journey unfolding and all of that? Why do you think that's more uncomfortable at the end of a year than any other time?
Oh, you first.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with societal expectations because we're forced to think about it. But it like pushes us into that. It's like a performance review. Like we're having this big performance review in December all of the time and aligning with our goals and what that's going to look like going forward. So this is kind of all of a theoretical push towards who are you going to be when you grow up? And I think December, the beginning of a year, Yule, whether you turn with the wheel of the year or whether you talk about January 1st or however you align with what looks like your new year, it's always a pressure point.
I would agree. In performance reviews, I mean, you think about that, and whether it's, in a formal corporate job or whether it's something where you're just meeting with your boss to be reviewed after you've been hired 3 months ago and it's your transition period. Whatever that looks like, they're stressful. It's a judgment. I mean, a performance review is a judgment. It's a judgment on how you're performing. And if you're doing it to yourself, why are you? I mean, it's back to the stress question. God, I'm like, as we talk about this, going, I don't know, we'll write a single goal. I might. I know me better than that. I will totally.
Well, of course,
But
yeah.
at the same time, they're aspirations, right? Who am I aspiring to be this year? And at the end of the year, each year, we could make it a plan to not put that pressure on, to not ask the question of, oh, what are your resolutions for next year? Be like, oh, what do you want to grow up to be next year? It's way more fun.
Or I was just thinking, and my I had two dogs. One passed away a couple years ago, and the other one passed away this year. But the question would be, what would Grace want you to achieve next year? And Grace was the name of my dog. Like,
Yeah.
what is your dog? Who does your dog want you to be next year?
More walks.
Right.
And if you asked mine today that are riding in the back, they'd say more Arby's roast beef sandwiches. Those were great.
Right? They're such good riders. They're just laying back there
You're just
peacefully.
chilling. You're totally chilling.
All right. So we talked about the performance review. We talked about, like, okay. So do you feel like the version of you from January would recognize who you are right now
No.
from January 2025?
Yes and no. Yes, I think physically, although even physically, I think I've shocked myself and grown because of acceptance in how my body has changed the last few years. But I think in terms of spiritually, in terms of all the things I took and grew and ran with, it just was like, ooh, I'm gonna do that. I'm totally gonna do that. Yep, I'm gonna start. Yeah, I've always loved the astrology. Natalie and I love astrology. We both do. But the fact that I was like, I'm just gonna do readings, and for that to be the way that we wrap up the year, would I have known that about me last year? I don't think so. As we entered the year, I would have said, I hope, but I don't know that I'd have committed to it.
Yeah, you were hoping to get around to readings or, to get that final, like, yeah, so now that it's here, it's like, yay. I think my January self would do a good management review of my 2025. We'd start with the good stuff, like, give me a high five, you made it, you're a little more healthy after incidents that happened. So, it'd give me a high five, but then it'd be like, you could do a little work on
Right? But there's areas too, yeah, because I look at if you would have asked me, I would have said our house remodel will be done because, hello,
That was the plan.
it's taking forever. But at the same time, then I look and go, and how much did I contribute to that as I was working 2 full-time jobs? How could I participate better and
Right.
be an active part of making that happen, right? So
It's a little retrospective.
it is.
So it's like the Oreo
It is,
sandwich.
because it is very much like an Oreo sandwich. Yeah. Because you're kind of doing your journaling in a little shadow of, okay, a little mirror, please. I need to look and see, where'd you miss? But where'd you hit? And I love that part of it. Where'd you hit? Because that's the creamy stuff in the center that's awesome, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a reverse Oreo sandwich because you got the high five on one side. You got the, hey, let's mirror this. Let's do this a little better next year.
Yeah.
But on the other side, you get another high five about how great you are.
There
So,
you go. I like that.
but yeah, I don't,
Double stuff for you.
my 2025 wouldn't recognize, my January 2025 totally wouldn't recognize me.
No.
Yeah,
My
not at all.
2025 wouldn't recognize you either. We had some shiznat this year for you.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that one again.
Nope, we're done.
All right, so I'm going to put a couple questions together. It's not the last two, but it's a couple questions. So do you feel like people are quietly questioning their lives right now? But I'm combining that because we've kind of talked about that. Why do you think so many people are rethinking work and relationships and identity all at once?
Mm.
And I think just to kind of peanut butter spread this as a topical answer, it has a lot to do with how our astrology has come together this year, and it's not going to end. Like, we're going to stay in this continuous growth with Aquarius and the Pluto and like all of the things that are coming direct and all of the things that were retrograde and why we had to think through this. So as we're coming direct, I think we're coming out of a fog type of situation where that's going to continue. And I think, like, as we get more with an eye on spirituality, with really connecting to ourselves, really connecting to our own intuition and being allowed to do that more in the society, because it wasn't so cool when 30 years ago, you and I being witches. That was not an acceptable thing.
No.
Now it's more acceptable.
What?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think having the retrospective about your work and about your relationships and about who you are is also more acceptable now. People are allowed to challenge themselves.
Right. Well, and you say that, and it's a really good point, because challenging ourselves, we've grown away from maybe just even the label of witches.
Exactly, yes.
Because it's a total spiritual eclectic, right? It's like, well, but I love Buddhism. And, give me a beautiful medicine wheel to go sit in, or to go walk and honor, I should say. And there is so much to that in terms of, but the expectations, because what was the first part of your question? There was something else there.
People are quietly questioning their lives right now.
Yeah. And I think there's different pieces and proponents of that, right? Number one, society in general, especially if you live in the US, has everybody questioning everything all the time. Like, what the hell is going on? And, it's not even is every week going to be a news cycle. It's every day, maybe every 5 minutes. You just don't know what's going to happen. It's just shifting constantly. So how could we understand ourselves, right? Because it's constantly a changing dynamic and continually changing. The other thing is, like you said, astrologically, we've had a lot of changes and shifts. And we've got a lot of movement coming up in this next year where it's like, if you listen to Rick Levine, for example, he's an astrologer, and he talks about how basically from COVID, which if you look at, January 12 and some of the conversations around the stars where they were at that moment, and yeah, COVID makes sense, right? But at the same time, we've been going around the bend, around the bend, around the bend since then. And we start really rounding the bend next year in astrology.
Yeah, so if this was a preparatory year, oh my God.
Right. But the thing is, it's a very, based on everything I'm hearing, it's a huge spiritual awakening. It's big bucks time, right? In terms of that, because of just, by big bucks, I mean, like, you're so rich in where you feel about your spiritual side and your connectedness. And I think that brings apart a whole different thing with our work dynamic. Because if you're sitting here exploring everything, like during COVID, that's a good example, because we all went remote. For those that weren't already, I've been remote for, I don't know, since the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
But for everybody else that it was their first time ever being a remote employee, it was like, oh my gosh, what fresh heaven is this? Or
Right.
what fresh hell, depending upon the
Also
perspective.
true, yeah.
So this has created a dynamic then where people were like, you know what, I'm not happy in my job. And we had the huge, wasn't retirement, what was it called? The huge resignation, the big resignation thing, the resignation nation or whatever it was called. Okay, so what are you doing with that now?
And I think you bring up a good point, because we talked about it being both work-related, who you are, your relationships, all of that. With all of the pandemic, all of everything that's been just the last few years, you really have put that under the microscope, because we were home. You had to take a look at your life, because your life was no longer defined about who you were outside of your own home.
Absolutely. And you had to re-examine your relationships, because if you're married or your kids and everybody's home together, oh boy, you might be spending 24/7 together all the time now. And that was very different from the 8 hours a day that people were spending, because you'd get home at the end of the day, you'd have dinner, you'd watch TV, you'd have some laughs. Well, now you get to see all the grumpy when you're at work. You get to see the bad meetings. You get to see the good meetings. You get to see school stuff happening online. So it disrupts whatever's happening for your work day, because your kid needs fed or whatever, right? That's normally the time that somebody at school's taking them to get fed. Or if they're really young, you're dealing with no daycare and things like that. So it was a huge, huge shift.
And we're still coming out of
And
that.
we're still coming out of that.
Well, and yeah, so I think that has really given us the permission to do that retrospective about our work and our relationships and our identity. And we're all stepping back being like, who do I want to be?
Yeah,
And what am I okay with?
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So next question. Do you think this year broke illusions or just made them harder to ignore?
Yes. Because, well, it broke some illusions, right? For me, it broke illusions about some of the political stuff and having more faith in just humanity in general. And, that shattered some illusions there. Um, but what was the second part with the illusions?
Or just made them harder to ignore.
That too. Because I think the reality, again, it was the mirror effect.
Yeah.
I just didn't see it. There were certain things that were just, sometimes people have to be so abhorrent and so awful that that's the only way that everybody else wakes up and says, oh my God, who is this person and who have I become by supporting, right?
Or become myself. What have I done lately that has been good or not?
Right. And how have I played a part in making things better or worse? And so I think that was part of the, some illusions were really shattered because I look at why didn't one party stand up when one was out of control? Why did people respond the way they did during shooting incidents and during different events? And I don't understand. But at the same time, I look at that and go, is this just something I have ignored?
Right.
And lived in a bubble or just lived in my happy little bliss. People. I mean, we know people and personalities and so on. But it was really easy to have that shattered and at the same time be reflective about it to say, okay, part of this is my problem because I just wasn't seeing this asshole or this amazing person either way for who they are.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're kind of rounding it out with all of the mirrors, all of the reflective surfaces that are coming up in December about who we are, who society is. One of the biggest things, and this is an old saying, but when somebody tells you who they are, believe them.
Believe them. Yeah,
and
right.
That has really hit home
That's
for me this year.
That's been a big one this year. Oh, yeah. God, that's so good. That is so good. Because it's so true. If someone shows you or tells you who they are, by God, believe them.
Yeah, don't make them better in your mind. Don't make them worse in your mind.
Right.
They are who they are and just believe them.
Right. That's their path. That's none of your business. Let them. Because we are constantly reminding people, right? Let them.
Yeah, let them be who they're supposed to be.
Yep. But it's been a reality check.
All right. So as we completely round it out, we prepare for the rounding of the astrology. And so Steph was talking about next year. I'm going to throw another plug in here. I so don't do this, but we're on the road and I'm just looking at flatlands.
Yeah.
If you're not a member, Stephanie sends out a weekly understanding of what your astrology looks like. So it's really helpful for those who want a little bit of a light touch. And, we have a fairly cheap membership. So check it out at immersivespirit.com. Moving on. What is one thing that you're not willing to drag into next year? One thing you're not willing to drag into next year.
One I won't say on here.
Okay.
But but I'm leaving behind. I'm very excited. Although I guess I will drag it in to the first part of the year, but it won't be for long. It's a good question. You start. All
right. So I'm going to work really hard on, all of I'm going to journal more. I'm going to meditate more. I'm going to be more with myself. But what I'm not going to do next year is I'm not going to do a retrospective every time we meet about what I missed.
I love that.
What I didn't do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. The other thing I would say, and it sounds very resolutionist, but it's not. And that's just make space for me.
Oh, I like it.
Because whether it's meditation, whether it's 15 minutes on a treadmill, whether it's, walking the pups that are now coming alive because the sun's bearing down on us. Yeah. Make space for me.
So if we're
journal time, it could be just my journal coffee, but allowing myself that time without feeling rushed by something else that I feel obligated to do, and not feeling bad about it, like you are saying, right? Not having to revisit it, going, I could have got this done while I was doing this instead.
So what you're not dragging into next year is everybody else's expectations and perceptions of who you're supposed to be.
Well, that sounds much more robust than just giving myself time for a walk. But yeah,
Well, yeah, but we have to do a Jeopardy style. Like, you have to answer the question, what are you not dragging into next year?
okay.
Not how great are you going to be, because we all know you're going to be great.
Okay, so not dragging into next year. Yeah, I'm not dragging in everybody else's calendar.
I like that. That's a good answer. All right, folks. So what are you not dragging into next year? You should put that in the comments.
Yes, please. We would love to see. Doesn't have to be resolutions. Just what are you not dragging?
Yeah, what are you going to leave behind?
Sorry.
She's been singing this whole trip, people. All right, we're almost there. All right, so we totally appreciate you hanging out with us today as we're on the road. We hope you appreciated this little side podcast episode, and we will see you again next week. Please remember to check out Stephanie's doing astrology readings. She sends out astrology on a weekly basis, unfreaking believable things that you can get from what you should and shouldn't do on a daily basis. You're going to want to check that out. All right, I'm Natalie.
I'm Stephanie.
And we hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.